Guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. Priscilla here with a little book review, a witchy book review. So if you're not into that, thanks for stopping by. But come back, there'll be more art stuff later. But for right now, we're reviewing On Pins and Needles, which is a witch's book of poppetry and figure magic by Kamden Cornell. It has a foreword from Matthew Venus, the author of Ensouling the Effigy. This is another one of those books that Crosscrow Books sent me for review. I have finished the book, I have thoughts on the book, and I'm going to share them with you. So, a big shout out to Crosscrow Books. Thank you for sending this my way for review. I really appreciate it, and I actually really enjoyed this book. If I had to give it a rating at this point in time, I think I'd give it like a 4 potatoes out of 5 potatoes, which is still a lot of potatoes. So I think it was really good. I enjoyed this book. I found it to be really easy to read. The information was really easy to digest and absorb, which is always really important to me when it comes to these books in particular, because if the information isn't accessible, it's not really worth sharing. So I think in this case, Kamden Cornell did a really great job getting their information across in a way that was like well written and delivered and could be easily absorbed and sort of taken on. I actually really enjoyed this book. I like the idea of poppet magic, and that's basically what this book is about, is making poppets and how to do it. There's a bunch of different sections that we'll go over and check out. This book has some interesting like artwork. It's got some great like little page designs, little frames and stuff like that. So lots of cool like little tiny bits that I think make this book just a little bit more delightful and enjoyable. I will say that the paper is a little bit thin, so I didn't like go through and highlight everything because I didn't want it to like bleed through to the other parts of the book or other pages and stuff like that. So I didn't get to like save everything. It's all up in the dome until I need it again. But I did really like this book. I have a couple of things that I maybe didn't love as much, and that more has to do with sort of the structuring of the book, because in this book, I will just say as like a, I don't know if it's even like a warning so much, but the author makes it very clear that they include the beneficial and the not so beneficial, the malefic, and they're interspersed throughout, like it's all mixed in together, so you sort of have to be careful reading to make sure that you're picking out the right things for you, or whatever. If you are one of the type of people who doesn't like working with baneful magic, then like you're gonna have to be eyes open reading through here, because it's all mixed in together. I would have just liked some sort of indication like from one thing to the other, so that you can sort of catalog it a little bit faster, especially when it comes back to like having to like reference the book. If I want to come back and just sort of thumb through it real quick and find what I'm looking for, or see if there's like a spell or something in here that I want to apply, it'd be really nice to just have like a little symbol or like a little guide that's like, this is the baneful stuff and this is the beneficial stuff, and like choose. You know, it'd be easier to sort of visually recognize. And so that's more of a formatting issue than sort of a like a dig at the book, but it is sort of what brings the book down a little bit for me. That, and I find that as a witchy practitioner who has a lot of things, if there are things in this book that I have to obtain in order to do the things, it has gone too far, because I have a very extensive catalog of like witchy ingredients, and I shouldn't have to go get anything else in order to do it. Not to say like nothing else, you know, like I don't mind having to go pick up like 1 or 2 items to do something magical, but like there's a lot of stuff in this book that I feel like is a little bit excessive, perhaps, depending on your viewpoint here, when it comes to magical ingredients and spell work and stuff like that. I feel like anything can be substituted for anything, and that's a personal feeling. So like there's substitutions for sure, but there's some stuff in here that's really, really expensive, or like really hard to get, or not practical to keep around, that might make it a little bit prohibitive as far as like how accessible the stuff in the book is to do. And that's not to say like there's only one way to do things, or there's not a workaround, or there's not other things in the book that are like accessible. There definitely is other stuff that you could do for sure, but particularly in the section on like planetary powders, that's where I was like, okay, to make this is sort of crazy. And I'll just give you guys an example, because you need 9 pearls crushed and powdered, 9 moonstones crushed and powdered, 9 cockle shells crushed and powdered, snakeskin powdered, sea salt, very fine silver shavings or dust, mugwort, which has been calcined to white ash, all to make the powder of Luna, which is crazy. I have 3 of these ingredients on hand. I have silver that I could shave, I have sea salt, and I have mugwort that I could burn into a white ash. I don't really know what calcined means. I'm hoping that's what it means, is to set it on fire, because that's the only way I would get it to ash, right? But I definitely don't have snake skin that I would be willing to powder. I do have a little sample of snake skin, but I would not be willing to powder it. I don't have cockle shells, and I don't have moonstone that I would want to powder, or pearls. I don't have pearls. So, like, I can't make this, and then I feel like there's not a lot of substitutions I can make for this without going completely off script, in order to do it. And that's like a lot of these, especially this powder section really threw me for a loop. But a lot of them are like that, like fur of a goat, which is just not something I have on hand, or even know how to get. So like that's where I dinged this a star, was for the lack of separation, and then the some of the ingredients are just a little bit high in price or rarity, that make them a little bit unobtainable. But otherwise, like I said, I really enjoyed the book. So that's all the negatives I have to say for that book, like for the book in general. Everything else I really enjoyed. I guess the only other negative, and this isn't really particularly a negative, it's just I don't love this for books, is when the introduction is really long. So like, this is all the introduction. This was hefty, and it took a very long time to get through. But it has like a bunch of the history and examples of like how poppets have been used in different cultures and stuff like that over time. And it was definitely really interesting. There's lots of references and stuff as well, which I really appreciate. There's a lot of footnotes in here that sort of clarify on things. In fact, the way that this whole book has been footnoted, I really, really enjoyed and appreciated. Because it made it really smart to go, like, it made it really accessible to go find the information or follow up, and in some cases there was a lot of good context that had been added to the footnotes that made like the reading of this a lot more enjoyable and a lot easier to sort of get through. But it is a very long introduction. It does come with a page of disclaimers that tells you about the ingredients in the books and how some of them are hazardous, and how some of these are just sort of a callback to ancient magic and stuff like that. It is giving a little alchemy, a little like alchemist in the way that the ingredients are being sort of presented and used, and like the calibers of which. So like maybe if you're an alchemist, you have this stuff on hand, but I don't. And I don't think that a lot of people would typically, but there are workarounds. So don't feel like there's no way to approach this book for sure. There's a whole section on why you would use poppets, which I thought was pretty good. There is a section on exactly what a poppet is, which I think is really important to define and clarify your terms. I kind of wish this had come before why you would use them. I feel like just defining it to begin with would have made a good launching point, but I do really appreciate that there is a whole little explanation on like where the word comes from and how we got here. And then like you guys can see, there's really great artwork in between here too. So like that's really fun. And then we have a little bit on how sympathetic magic works, and like why you would use a poppet to do sympathetic magic. So that's also like a really good chunk of information there. And then we have how to make a poppet, and like different things that you could do, different materials that you might want to make your poppet with, like paper, clay, dough, wax. There's leather, there's porcelain, there's tons of different ways, bone, body fluids, all sorts of stuff is going on in here, on things that you can make a poppet with and stuff that you might use or include with your poppet to sort of add to it overall, and things that you might want to make like connections with. And then there is the heart of the matter, which is a whole section on what you're going to put inside of your poppet, and like why you would want to put stuff inside of your poppet. And then this section was actually probably my favorite, which was considerations on color. The entirety of this is like not just like here's this color and this color means this, but why you would use this color, sort of the relations to this color, things that this color can sort of bring about in your mind. And as a visual art witchy type person, working with color is very important to my personal practice. So having something like this, which is like an in-depth guide on color and how you would use it in relation to this particular type of magic, is also really, really like valuable and beneficial to me. So I really, really enjoyed this. Also, the sections for these colors are nice and big, so there's a lot to like pick up here. And like you know, there's a lot of stuff that like sort of covers different cultures and how they view these colors. So like you might see it this way and other cultures might see it that way, and why you would choose these things and the different relations to that. So like, yeah, just a really cool section in general. And then we have more on what goes inside of the poppet. So like the other one was like the core of your poppet, and these are like stuff that you would fill your poppet with, like stuffing, sand, dried meat, beans, rice, herbs that you could put into your poppet, and then like the associations there as well. So I love a good correspondence chart in anything, so I really like that. There's a little bit here on metal and the relations to it, and then we have that powder section. And then you got like a whole section on tools and stuff that you might need in order to work with poppets or to make poppets. How you would like keep the stuff that you're going to use for your poppet making. So like just a really general knowledge sort of section, but I really like appreciate this, especially if you're new to this type of magic. It's nice to have somebody sort of break down like, here are the things that like go into making this, but also the things that you're going to need in order to make this or to keep this part of like your regular practice. We have another great illustration here. And then how to bring your poppets to life, give them like a purpose and give them sort of a direction. This section was really great. And like I said, the footnotes were just giving. So much here to like explain and sort of go into depth here, which I really, really like. There's a little bit about fluid condensers, which is kind of a spoiler for the next book I have to share with you guys. And then how to make those and different like ways that you can make a fluid condenser for this type of stuff if that's what you're interested in. And then we have sort of a spirit doll and what that means, and then how you can make that yourself and what you would use them for. So that I thought was also really, really cool. I actually really like the spirit doll section probably more than the crafting just like a regular poppet section. To each their own, but I really, really enjoyed that one. And then we have the rituals section. So these are different, obviously, rituals that you would do with your poppets, and you know, like the step-by-steps, the things that you could use the other stuff that you already learned about to incorporate that, but also in the rituals themselves, there's a lot of great like wording and stuff that you could sort of adapt to your own practice, because I feel like for this book, the author borrows from their own personal practice a lot, like a lot. So like a lot of this stuff is given up to Hecate. If you don't work with Hecate, or that's not like your personal practice, you don't have to feel like you have to use that, and the author makes that clear as well. It's just what they use in order to do their rituals, so that is why it is there. But it makes a great template that you can sort of jump off with. So it's always nice to have like rituals sort of worked out. It's just so many things. So this is sort of encroaching on like sorceress or like ceremonial magic a little bit, which is not my particular vibe as a witch. So like I think that's probably why some of this just doesn't resonate for me. But like if that's your vibe and like your jam and you like doing everything out to the nines, this would definitely be up your alley. But like I said, I feel like a lot of this is just because it's the author's personal practice and not just like here's a set standard of how to do things. I will say though is that because the author is borrowing from their personal practice, you don't see a lot of stuff about how poppets are used in other cultures outside of like the introduction where they sort of explain the origins and sources that different poppets and like poppetry comes from. there's not like a lot that explains anything else. So like if you're looking for something that's like a universal guide to puppetry and puppet magic like around the world, this is not it. This is a very centered focus from the author's center of perspective and their learning. And they mentioned that like they learned their magic in their bio from their grandparents. So it's like stuff that's been passed down. So it's very, very localized, which isn't a bad thing. Just something to keep in mind if you're looking for something more culturally diverse or like more widespread. It's not going to be that way. It's going to be very centered around the author's personal practice and perspective, which is totally cool with me. It's always nice to see like how people do stuff, but just something to like consider if you're looking at this book. I found it to be very interesting, and I find the rituals to also be like really well written. Words are really hard. And easy to adapt to whatever you need, like personally in your own personal witchy practice. And you should kind of be adapting people's stuff when you're reading these books as opposed to just taking it like verbatim. You want to make it, personal to yourself and something that corresponds or connects in your own mind. So like having the template provided for you by the author is great, as long as you're like using that to sort of develop and like push your own magic a little bit further. So I do really like the templates that have been laid out in this book. And then you have a whole like bit about how like to awaken and then take care of your spirit doll after you've got it like all started, and sort of the things to go with there. And then there is a little conclusion back here where they sort of wrap up their perspective on the book. And then in the back section here you get a whole bit on different like spells and charms and stuff that you can do with your poppet. And like I said, the malefic and the beneficial are all mixed in together here, so you have to sort of parse them out as you go through on your own and figure it out. But there's a bunch of different little tiny charms that you can make here. There's a whole recipe for gingerbread people, which you could use as puppets. And there's like stuff on how to use them in dreams. And just like this is a great big section on charms and little spells and magics that you can do with your poppets. How to do it with chewing gum. There's a lot of like fun things in here too. There's a salt dough figure thing in here, which is actually really fun. I used to make salt dough a lot as a kid, so I'm kind of looking forward into picking that up because I think those are perfect. And they break down naturally, so if you had to leave them in the environment somewhere for some reason, you could leave a little tiny salt dough and it would break down and return to the earth, which I think is really fun. And then there's a whole appendix that has different places that you could pin like your poppet if you're going to use pins in your puppetry. There's different ways and like different reasons. And then in this section, which is like why I guess I kind of am like, I don't understand why we didn't do this for the whole book, but they even say that like there's the beneficial is in italics, and then the malefic is in regular print. So there is an indication between one and the other, and I kind of just sort of wish we had done that for the book, so that it was easier to sort of parse that out. Some sort of indication of like why or what would have been really helpful. And then in the back, of course, you have your bibliography, which was very extensive for this one, so I really like that, because it shows me that the author did put a lot of work into said book, and the references did pay off. And then we have our index, and I believe that is the end of the book. So that's a little flip through and a little review from my perspective on Pins and Needles, which is a witch's book of puppetry and figure magic by Kamden Cornell. Let me know what you guys think. Is this something that you would pick up? Is it up your alley at all? I found this to be a really interesting read, and something that I can see myself coming back to. I don't use a lot of puppetry in my personal practice, but it's not something I'm not interested in. That's a double negative for no reason. It's something I'm interested in. I just haven't utilized it a lot. So having this as a guide and like a launching off point is a really great like thing for me. So I was really excited to get this book and give it a read. And I like the artwork. I like the vibe. I wish the paper was just a slight bit like thicker so that I could write all over it, because I do like to mess up my witchy books. But That is just me. Let me know what you guys think, if you'll pick this up. And again, a big thank you to Crosscrow Books for sending this to me for free for a review. I appreciate that, and I had a good time reading it. And then, like I said, I have one more book to share with you guys, so stay tuned for that. And of course, stay tuned for more artsy things on this channel. And until next time, guys, I appreciate your faces. Happy crafting and goodbye.